All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Leave a 5-star review on iTunes and Spotify. It doesn't matter what you say, just leave a 5-star review. Anyway, I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Well, this is our introduction to Jason Jordan. He is the college basketball recruiting analyst for Locked On, and we're going to take this opportunity to do a little segment to kind of preview who the players that Ole Miss might have for this season, because as you know, Jason, there's a ton of turnover.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely, always.
Yeah.
Always. You guys have a new group. Definitely got a new group.
Yeah, a lot of people. We the group's going to be led by some of the old standbys, Matthew Morrell, and I can't remember the point guard's name, but he's a really good player. But we're here about the recruiting class for 2022, and Ole Miss signed 4 players. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about these guys and what we can expect from them.
Well, I've seen most of the guys on the circuit, and so I think you have a really good group. A lot of talent, a lot of size, good versatility. I would start with TJ Caldwell, 6'4", scoring guard. And the biggest thing I would say about him is he's a super athlete. So he's a great two-way player, a versatile defender because of his length. I think he's about 6'4". But he's a guy you cannot keep out of the paint. You're not keeping him out of the paint. You're not staying in front of him because he's really shifty with his ball handling ability. And, he's a guy I definitely think that Kermit will be able to use from day one for sure. Malik, I can't remember. Malik. 6'10", big body, big, strong finisher, man. And very versatile, too. Ball handler. He's an underrated playmaker. But he's an amazing rebounder. Big body down there. He cleans up well. Great hands. Great touch in the paint. But he's a big who can take you out on the wing, and he can create from the high post. Great face-up game, and you have to respect it. So that's what makes him more dangerous because he is I think he goes about 230, 240, something like that. But he's around 6'10". So then you have Amari Abram, 6'3" point guard. Loved him at SoCal last year. He played with some really talented players, and a lot of times he was the best player on the court, and that was with some really talented players who were, at times, he played with 5 stars, and he was the best player on the court. Just a guy he thrives in getting downhill, but a very high IQ guy, a versatile playmaker who creates for himself, but he also creates for his teammates. Great vision, dictates pace very well. And a guy who also is a great defender on the perimeter, too. And then lastly, but certainly not least, Robert Cowherd is a shooter, right? I mean, he does other things, but he's going to earn his time stroking it from the perimeter because that's what he does best. I think he played with Amari at SoCal. And so that's a talented 4. I would definitely say that's a very talented class. I think they were just on the outside of our 2022 top 25. I remember going back and forth on that, but they definitely were deserving of being in the top 25 because that's a good collection of 4 guys that I think will be able to step in and contribute in large ways and in small ways next season or this season.
Well, whenever you take these 4 players and you see them as a collective, how does that mean when you think of the way Ole Miss wants to play? How does that look?
Well, I mean, because I say this all the time, the new wave and the new methodology is to load the court with playmakers and guys who can score the ball out 3 levels. 3 of these guys can. Well, really 4. I mean, Malik can too, but it's not what he does regularly. So clearly, Kermit was, taking the new age blueprint with loading the court with playmakers, versatile playmakers who you can use interchangeably. And that 4 definitely is a group and a core that can be used interchangeably and guys that you can use in different sets, especially on the defensive end of the ball because they can guard multiple positions. and score in a variety of different ways. And those guys are like, they're wired to just know their personalities aren't selfish. So from what I know of them, from what I've seen of them, they like to share the ball, right? So you're going to get a lot out of a group like that is wired like that. And it sounds cliche to say, but it's not normal. Most guys are not wired like that, at least, especially not all of them. But I can say that I've laid eyes on all of them multiple times, and I definitely get the sense that they are a group who likes to share the ball.
All right. Have you looked at their transfers at all? Do you have any idea about those guys?
I haven't seen a lot of their transfers. I won't make that up. I haven't seen a lot of their transfers. So I don't know a great deal about their transfers. I definitely don't know a lot of transfers. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that kid, Josh Mballa, and maybe you had because whenever he went to Texas Tech and then he went to Buffalo and he kind of bounced around. But we will get to that at another day when you can perhaps drop some eyes on that. So Ole Miss has their three. You got Jamin Brakefield coming back. You've got Matthew Morrell. You've got a whole bunch of great players that are coming back. And how will these guys mesh with what they already have?
Right. So because, so the key there is that they're unselfish, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I think all of these guys, well, most of them, definitely Rob and Amari and definitely TJ, even Malik too. They all are guys who their personalities on their teams that I saw was to accept their role, right? And so I think they realize when they accept their role, that is what makes them successful. The irony. And so I think because they're wired that way, they'll mesh well with Jamin, who's a guy I've seen for 6-7 years. Love Jamin. And I think they'll be able to follow that lead. I think they'll fall in line, right? I think they're wired like that, and they're very talented. So Jamin's a guy who, obviously, his background, played at Duke, played with a bunch of stars. But, he's stepping into a leading role, and I think he'll thrive there because he's a really good leader. He's a good leader in regards to the way he can do it, obviously, with his play. But I think he's really grown as a vocal leader too. So I think those guys will fall in line with he and Morrell, and I'm expecting big things this season for sure.
All right, DeShawn Ruffin is the name of the person I forgot to mention earlier. And speaking of which, he's coming back off of an ACL, and I'm sure you saw DeShawn as a high schooler quite a bit. With the way he plays, how do you foresee an ACL injury and him bouncing back from that?
Yeah. So it's a new day, right? Me and you would probably say back when we played, or back in that day, ACL was like a kiss of death, right? Even coming back from it, you're not going to be the same. It's going to affect him. But there's the way. I mean, I write these 10 stories a year on ACLs and talk to so many doctors and trainers, and they're like, even if you realize the time for the recovery of ACL used to be 9 months, almost a year. Now I see guys coming back in 4 months, 5 months, definitely 6 months, and they're strong. The ACL is stronger than it was before. So there have been so many technological advances and breakthroughs in medicine. This is what I've been told by doctors and trainers and stuff like that. And so I get what you're saying about the way he plays. Super explosive. Always going. That's DeShawn, very, very high energy guy. But because I'll give you a great example. MJ Rice. A lot of people forget that he tore his ACL. He's at Kansas now. He's McDonald's All-American that went to Kansas. He tore his ACL junior year, I think it was, maybe sophomore year of high school, and he was out for the year. But he came back, and he was by far, visibly better than he was before. Another one was Jeremy Roach at Duke. He tore his ACL senior year of high school, and you see the march he had last year was one for the record books. So a guy, and he plays like DeShawn, right? They play similar styles. So from based off what I've seen in the last 5 years, I thoroughly expect him to be DeShawn Ruffin,
Yeah.
and a guy who's definitely gonna step into a starring role. That's just his personality, and that's just his makeup, and that's just how he is. I mean, he's a dog out there, and I expect him to play like that. He's not a guy who's gonna overthink the injury. He's wired different. Like he's on a different level for sure, mentality wise.
All right, before I let you out of here, there's another one. I'm just curious if you know anything about. This is a current player. Did you cover at all James White when he was coming up?
Yeah. I saw a decent amount of him. I saw a decent amount of him on the circuit.
Okay, he was a star whenever Ole Miss had their Bahamas trip in June.
Yeah.
He had like 3 straight games over 20 points in a player, and I just anything that you have on him, I would gladly take as well.
Just super versatile. He's another mentality guy. That I do remember very well about James. Just a guy who is wired to make plays, and I think he thrives. Obviously, he's a great scorer, but I think he thrives as a playmaker as well, and I think that's an underrated part of his game. Definitely a guy who's going to be able to step in and obviously is already contributing for you guys this year, but he's a guy who knows that. So there are guys, I say this all the time, there are guys who think they're the best player on the court, and there are guys who know it, and they just know it within themselves. And I feel like James kind of fits that bill. You know what I'm saying? Like people talk about Mamba mentality. James is kind of like that. He's very self-confident in a great way. And, you could be self-confident and be outwardly self-confident, but I think he's a guy who's like, he just knows it, and that's enough. And he just goes, he's always gone out and every time I've watched him play, especially on the circuit, which is more telling because you're playing against guys who are at your level or better. He's always been one of the best players on the court, if not the best player on the court. And that's saying a lot.
Between him and Matthew Morrell, could one of them play the 3 at the college level?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I definitely think I think both of them have the versatility to. I think maybe James may be a little bit more ready to play the 3 right now at this level, but I definitely think they both have the versatility to, and they certainly can guard multiple positions. So I think they're both guys that Kermit is going to be able to run with a lot of different lineups, especially on the defensive end, because they check a lot of those boxes off.
All right. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, go to the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team experts and Odyssey NFL insiders are all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search your Ultimate Pro Football Preview on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was just awesome, man, and hopefully we can do it again pretty soon.
Absolutely, man. Looking forward to it.
All right.